Breakout freshmen, Jordan. We have had quite a few freshmen, true freshmen, contribute in a big way for our Clemson Tigers so far this season. First guys that kind of come to mind is guys that we were talking about preseason, right? You think about a Bryant Wesco, you think about a TJ Moore, the addition of those guys in the wide receiver room. We thought this season would greatly elevate that room, and it has. Those guys have absolutely balled out. They've been huge playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. They've created the explosive play again for this Clemson offense, which is really great. But in recent weeks, we've had a couple other true freshmen that have really started to come into their own as far as their Clemson Tiger career goes. Sammy Brown comes to mind. He had an amazing first start last week, led the team in tackles. I think he's got 4 sacks on the year. I think he led the team in tackles for loss last week as well. Just had a great first start as a Clemson Tiger. Now, he's played this season at points and times, but that was his first start where he truly went out there and played a complete game for Clemson. I think he had an amazing game. That his future is so bright at Clemson. Can't wait to see what he's going to turn into. Another guy, Ashton Hampton. I know everybody's mind immediately just went to that crazy interception that he had this past Saturday against Virginia Tech. It was absolutely insane. Just his reach, his length, the physicality that he plays with. And that play came directly after getting beat on a big explosive play by the other team, by Virginia Tech, right? They go right back at him, and he makes them pay for it. So he's definitely started rounding into his own. And then Elijah Thurman last week gets kind of thrown into the fire of starting his first game and playing major snaps because Walker Parks was out. And then very early in the game, Tristan Lay goes out, right? So you can't move Harris Sewell over you can't move Walker Parks over to tackle because he's already out, which would have been Clemson's first move was to move. They would have moved Walker Parks out to tackle.
It was Marcus Tate that was out. Not
Marcus Tate, excuse me. Marcus Tate. They would have moved Marcus Tate. Thank you. Thank you for the correction. Marcus Tate out to tackle, and they'd have brought Harris Sewell in at guard, and they'd have rolled that way. Well, he was out. Marcus Tate was out. They thought he was going to play, but he didn't play. Tristan Lay goes down. So they got a call on true freshman, and he just gets it done, man. Elijah Thurman went out there, and he didn't play a perfect game. He wasn't without his mistakes. But I think for a true freshman offensive lineman to walk out there and play left tackle for basically an entire game, you couldn't have painted a better game for him to play. So those are just a few that come to mind for me. What are kind of your thoughts on these guys and maybe some other true freshmen that kind of have stood out to you as we are 3/4 of the way through the regular season now?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit on them. I mean, the impact that TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco have made on this wide receiver room. We've talked about it all season. I won't spend a lot of time on that. You mentioned Sammy Brown on defense. I don't know if people realize this, but Sammy Brown is second on the team in sacks, second on the team in tackles for loss, and second on the team in solo tackles. And he's played what, like maybe 20 snaps a game?
Yeah, go look at his snap count compared to the rest of the people on the top of that list.
He's been incredible, and especially with in recent weeks. When he's just looks more comfortable out there. He's playing really fast, flying around the field, making tackles. I mean, can't really. We knew how good he was and how good he was going to be, but we wondered how quickly he would pick things up. And every week, it just seems like he's, and the coaching staff has said as much, like he just gets better and better each week. Really excited for him. And, he was a massive shot in the arm as far as your run defense on Saturday. You mentioned Ashton Hampton, a guy we've seen more of throughout the season. He came in really ready to play. I mean, physically, he's 6'3", 200 pounds at corner, but has the positional versatility that Dabo mentioned. Like he said, you might not see him just play corner throughout his career because he really is a multifaceted, multi-tool type of defensive back. So he's been awesome, and he's just gotten more and more comfortable. as the season has gone on, and obviously made that big interception on Saturday. So really cool to see him. And of course, Elijah Thurman stepping in when, Tristan Legg goes out and you already don't have Marcus Tate. And he holds up against the nation's, leader or second in the second in the country in sacks, and Antoine Powell-Ryland. So,
Yeah.
You can't really ask for more from these true freshmen. I mean, this class is, we raved about this freshman class, and I think there are other guys that that are probably redshirt candidates that I think are going to see significant roles next season that I'm really excited to see. So I mean, just it's been really cool, man. Just to see those guys grow as the season has gone on and get more opportunities. Kind of wish that some of them got opportunities earlier. And in the receiver's case, of course, first game of the year probably would have been nice. And then, of course, Sammy Brown, getting more snaps was kind of a big deal last week, but you could have had him a couple of weeks ago, and maybe things might have been in a little bit better shape, but I don't know. Hindsight's 2020.
Always. You can always, do the Monday morning quarterback thing. You can always, hindsight's 2020, all that kind of stuff. But just encouraging to see these true freshmen come out here and just, you can really see the development as the season's gone on, especially for a guy like Sammy Brown, whose snaps have been pretty limited. And then, you go to last week, and because of, the 12-team personnel that Virginia Tech plays with, and Clemson's really inability to be able to set the edge at the defensive end position, they switched to that 4-3 look last week to really put an emphasis on controlling that running game against a Virginia Tech team that coming into that game had been a really good team as far as rushing the ball. And Clemson clamped down on them and only allowed them to rush for 40 yards. So his impact was greatly felt last week, as was Ashton Hampton and the rest of those guys as well. It's good to see those guys stepping up. Exciting to see what their careers are going to turn into as Clemson Tigers, especially with so much early success for them. All right, Jordan, moving right along into final thoughts on Virginia Tech. It was a game that started out pretty poorly for the offensive side of the ball. I remember watching that first half thinking, "Oh boy, this is gonna be bad. This looks a lot like last week. This looks a lot like the type of offense that gets us beat." And then obviously they turn the page to the second half, score on the first two drives, punch the ball in the end zone, first two drives of the second half, and kind of coast to a nice victory, turning the page to the defensive side of the ball, obviously debuting that 4-3 due to the 12-man personnel, the focus on stopping the run game, lights out pretty much for the defense. Didn't give up a single point until basically the end of the game, a garbage time fourth quarter touchdown that didn't really mean anything other than it was kind of disappointing because you would have liked to see the defense hold that shutout that they had going. The only other points scored in the game were obviously on that amazing special teams play where we got a field goal blocked once again, and this time it was returned for 6 points, and that was all that Virginia Tech could muster until that late fourth quarter score. So after rewatching the game and having some time to digest everything, what are your final thoughts on this Virginia Tech game? Anything that stands out since we've talked last Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, most of my takeaways are on the offensive end. It really was in that first half. I mean, and Dabo talked about it, but they really did leave a lot of meat on the bone there. Just a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes, drops. That hasn't really been a huge problem this year, but for whatever reason, some of your best guys were dropping the football. Antonio Williams had a key drop. Bryant Wesco had a drop on the sideline. That Cade did a great job in scramble drill creating that opportunity. TJ had a couple he wishes he could have had back. It was just Jake had a drop. Like it was really, really disjointed. And you'd like to see them kind of compete a little bit better. I don't expect that to be a long-term issue. Sometimes that just happens, but there were a lot of things that they didn't do all that well. Offensive line, I thought, although they gave up, the stats say they gave up 4 sacks. No, I don't think really any of them were the offensive line's fault. I thought they actually played pretty well on the week. I believe, according to Pro Football Focus, we already talked about Elijah Thurman. He allowed the least amount of pressures of anybody on that line. I think he allowed 1 the entire game.
That's pretty special.
Yeah. So I was really, really pleased. Honestly, I thought they played well. And once they got the run game going, it definitely opens things up in the second half. Phil Maffa just continues to be fantastic. I made an appreciation post about him yesterday, highlighting his stats. He's at over 1,000 all-purpose yards. He's almost at 1,000 rushing yards. He's second in the ACC, 13th nationally in rushing yards, 8 touchdowns, 6.1 yards per carry, which I think is like third in the ACC among running backs that have like at least 100 carries. So he just continues to be that workhorse, and I don't even think he's completely healthy. So just he continues to be your guy. Hopefully you get an opportunity next week, next Saturday, is to get some of the younger backs in. But until then, Dabo said it. He said, "More Mo Maffa, Mo better."
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's what he said. So. I agree. Just keep feeding him the rock, because he gets better and better as the game goes on, and that's the special thing about him. It's like he doesn't run all over you in the first half, and then kind of is ineffective. As the game goes on, he just gets more and more effective, because guys don't want to tackle that man in the open space after they've been on the field for as long. Especially when Virginia Tech, as long as their defense was on the field, like 39 minutes. 37 minutes, something like that. Pretty incredible. The block punt. The block kick. Dabo said it was a low kick. I guess I'll take his word for it. He said he liked how they had it blocked up. It was just Nolan Hooser just kicked it low. And I wondered about that. Against Louisville, I wondered how many of that. Which one of those were low kicks and which one of those was poor protection.
Yeah.
But this one was definitely confirmed to be a low kick. So
yeah, I mean, and look, I think it could have been somewhat of a low kick, but Clemson's protection got blown up the middle. No shade to Peyton Page, because he's an absolute dog, but he got blown up on that play. And you can't give up pressure right up the middle, especially when you're kicking somewhat of a longer field goal. So yeah, I do agree that it was probably low, but your protection still was not great at the same time. So I think 2 things were probably true on that field goal try that ultimately got blocked in return for a touchdown. But overall, I think you can walk away from the second half of that game as a Clemson fan and be somewhat encouraged that the offense did get it together. They were able to weather some adversity from that first half, where, we probably have 5 or 6 drops in that game, uncharacteristic drops from guys like Antonio Williams, who doesn't drop passes, right? And other guys as well. Jake Brenningstool, has been dropping the ball a bit as of late, and some of the other guys as well. And then the uncharacteristic penalties and just some poor decision making by Cade at times, especially in that first half. But they weathered through it, and in the end, they did enough to win the game, which is, at the end of the day, at this point in time in the season, that's the goal. You got to win games, and Clemson's got to win out and hopefully get some help to get where they want to go. But Dabo talked about Cade this week from a leadership standpoint. He thought he was great from a quarterback standpoint and decision-making standpoint. He said it was probably his worst game of the season. So I think that's just, he got a little rattled maybe in that first half, made some poor decisions, rushed some things, tried to do a little too much. But, at the end of the day, he got the job done. And that's all you can ask for. You saw the improvement come out after halftime. The offense definitely set a different tone. We talked about special teams. That stuff's got to get cleaned up. Still fully believe that stuff needs to be cleaned up and some changes need to be made there. But again, you get enough done, and you know, here we are. Got one more conference game left, and we will see as everyone else decides our fate.
Yep, absolutely. I do want to point out, we did, we've given our flowers to the defense for how they performed on Saturday. I'm not ready to conclude that they've turned a corner. I will say that, and not just because I want to be pessimistic, but the reality is the Virginia Tech offense he faced was not in the best shape. It was clear Kyron Drones was not healthy. Basil Tootin was definitely not healthy. Only got he had 4 carries the entire game, and then he went out in the third quarter, I believe, and then it didn't come back in. So as well as you stopped the run, like you did what you were supposed to do against that offense. That was, I don't know why they didn't try to run it more. Even with they have a couple of. I know Malachi Thomas was out, but their third back who got a lot of run against Syracuse the week before, they didn't give him the ball. So I thought that was kind of weird. But you did what you had to do. They were hobbled, but you took care of business, and they weren't able to get anything going offensively. So you made a shorthanded offense look shorthanded, which is better than what you've been able to say at times in other games this year. So I got to give them flowers, but I also have to put that caveat there because I'm not ready to conclude that. And of course, with who you're playing on Saturday, I'm wondering if we still see the same personnel grouping. Will we see that 4-3? I kind of doubt it. From the way the coaches have talked this week, and Dabo saying it was just more of a personnel for that week type of thing, and their opponent in regards to other than making a permanent change,
right?
It didn't seem like that was the direction and mindset that they had when they did that. So
yeah, no, I think the 4-3 was probably solely because of how much 12 personnel that Virginia Tech plays. So, moving on to the Pitt game, I don't want to give too much away. We'll talk about it when we do the Pitt breakdown because I got some thoughts on what the defense might end up doing, or what I think they might end up doing for that Pitt game. But they're a lot more 11 personnel type deal. So we'll see. We'll see what the defense trots out there. But I don't think it was any sort of permanent change. But I do have some thoughts on maybe some personnel moving around that Clemson might try to do against Pitt.